He was a lecturer in economics and public policy at Howard, at my own alma mater, at Harvard as well. He also served as resident advisor to the Ministry of Finance in Indonesia and the Gambia. Steve is, as I said, he's a scholar, a published author, having been the author of Emerging Africa, How 17 Countries Are Leading the Way. In 2010, that was published. Also, Challenging Foreign Aid, A Policymaker's Guide to the Millennium Challenge, published in 2003. He's also co-author of Economics of Development, the 6th edition being published in 2006, and that remains a leading undergraduate textbook. Steve holds a master's degree and a PhD degree in public policy from Harvard University, and Bachelor of Science in Mathematics from Central Michigan University. And as I referenced earlier, much of this began, I'm sure that early in life, Steve can trace his roots back to Peace Corps and international service and the other things he's done before Peace Corps, but certainly I know that I've heard him say that it was an important step along the way for him. Steve and his wife, Carrie Hessler Radelet, were Peace Corps volunteers in Western Samoa from 1981 to 1983. Steve has gone on to do his work at USAID. Carrie is the Deputy Director of Peace Corps, and my boss there, who's a leader and a mentor in the work in that agency. Again, it's my pleasure to present to you the Senior Economist for the United States Agency for International Development, Steve Radelet.
Thank you. That would make my mother blush. That was really something. Thank you, Earl. It's great to see everybody here. Good morning from everybody around the world, around the country. This is great. This is an amazing organization in its 5th year, energizing people around the country, around the world. I am really proud and very pleased to be here. It's great to be here at Northeastern. What a great place for a conference. Let's hear it for Northeastern University and everybody here who put this together. This is really outstanding. And for the Millennium Campus Network, for Sam and his team and the people that have been working on this for months and months and months. This is a lot of work, and they have done an outstanding job. So thanks to all of them. Yeah, give it up for Sam and the team. Come on. I want to talk today about global progress in development. And I got some news for you. Some people say that we're failing. Some people say that development isn't working around the world. Some people say that foreign aid is a failure. Some people say that developing countries, typically, are run by a bunch of hapless, corrupt dictators, and that we're wasting our time and our effort. Some people want to look at the number of people who still suffer from poverty and say we're wasting our time. That's what they say. I'm here to say they're wrong. I'm here to say that we live today in the greatest era of global development in the history of the world. There has never, ever been so much progress in fighting poverty, in increasing incomes, in improving health and education around the world as we have been seeing in the last 2 decades around the world. There is no question. The data are absolutely clear that we are living today and seeing today greater progress than ever. So what we can say is that fighting poverty is not just a possibility, it's happening right now. Let me just give you 4 numbers to back it up. There are lots of them, but our time is a little limited. But let me give you 4 numbers. First of all, since 1960, the average income in low-income countries around the world has tripled. Tripled. That's after inflation. That's after exchange rate movements. That's in real terms. The typical person living in a developing country today has 3 times as much income as their grandparents. 3 times. That's huge in terms of improvement in incomes. Second, health. Infant mortality in 1960 was 166 per thousand. 166 per thousand. What that means is that in 1960, out of every 1,000 live births in developing countries, 166 kids did not live until their first birthday. 166 out of 1,000. Today, that number is down to 38 out of 1,000, which is still way too high, by the way. But 128 kids today live that would have died before their first birthday. 50 years ago. That is huge. Just this week, UNICEF released a report, if you haven't seen it, get it, about child survival, and for the first time ever, we're below 7 million preventable deaths among children last year. It's never happened before. We're now down below 7 million preventable child deaths, a huge milestone. So that's health. Poverty, just in the last 15 years, or the last 20 years, in 1993, around the world, there were 1.9 billion people that had incomes of under $1.25 a day. Think of that, $1.25 a day. It's really tough. That was in 1993, 1.9 billion. As of 2008, that number was down to 1.3, less than 1.3. That means in 15 years, we saw a reduction in the number of people living in poverty by 1/3. 700 million fewer people in just 15 years. A lot of that is China and India. But you know what happened between 2005 and 2008? For the first time ever in the history of the world, the number of people living in poverty fell in every single region of the world. East Asia, South Asia, Latin America, Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and for the first time ever in Sub-Saharan Africa. We are seeing poverty falling around the world right before our eyes. And it's not just on income and health and poverty. We're seeing democracy and accountable government rise around the world. It's tough, it's uneven, some countries are falling back, but there is no doubt that there is a worldwide movement towards democracy and accountable governments. I'll just give you an example. In Africa, I wrote a book about Africa a couple of years ago. In 1989, there were only 3 democracies in Sub-Saharan Africa, just 3, Botswana, Mauritius, and the Gambia. Today, there are over 20. Over 20. They're fragile, they're imperfect, just like the United States has been for a long, long time. Democracy is really tough. It's really hard. But we have, for the first time ever, more low-income countries in the world than ever before struggling to become accountable democracies. And we're seeing progress on fronts all around the world. So don't tell me that development is failing. It's not. So what works? What separates the countries that have been successful from those that have not? Well, we don't have a whole lot of time, but I'm going to charge through here with a couple of quick things. The first and foremost thing that matters are the choices that are made by the people and the leaders of developing countries themselves. We who work from the outside, many of you are from developing countries, but I'm not. Those of us who work from the outside have to be a little humble. What we do is not what's most important. And to suggest that it is does a disservice for the people who make courageous decisions around the world for their families, for their communities, and their countries. The most important thing are the choices made by the people and leaders of developing countries themselves. A couple of those choices stand out as really critical over the last 40 or 50 years. One is integration with the global economy through trade, through technology, through information flows, through the internet, through travel, airplane travel, through information flows, through knowledge, all of the connections that we have with each other. And the more that countries are connected with the rest of the world, the more that countries grow and the faster that poverty falls. That's a pretty clear relationship. It's not universal, not always, but it's a pretty clear, pretty strong relationship. Another thing that stands out are smart investments that countries make in their people. Smart investments, particularly in agriculture, in health, and in education. Now that sounds like a bit of a simple recipe, but we've only got a couple of minutes. But those are some of the key policy choices that countries make. So that's one, is choices. The second is technology. Technology matters a huge amount in poverty reduction. It's been the case since the Industrial Revolution, and it is certainly the case today. And that's technology in terms of better medicines, immunizations that save lives. It's in terms of agriculture, fertilizers and seeds that grow more food. It's in terms of better sanitation and toilets and clean water that save huge numbers of lives. It's things like oral rehydration therapy, little salt sugar solutions that save millions of children's lives every day. It's cell phones that create jobs for people around the world and connect us. It's the internet. It's all range of technologies. And for the future, as we continue to solve global problems, developing new technologies and getting them out to the rest of the world is going to be a big key. So that's number two. Number three institutions. Some people claim that institutions are everything. There's a famous school of thought that's now becoming prominent that institutions are everything. They're not everything, but they are critically important. Leadership matters. People like Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, emerging from the chaos of Liberia's incredibly bloody civil war, make a difference. Leaders around the world make a big difference. People like Jerry Rawlings, who was a flight lieutenant in Ghana, but decided after nearly 20 years in power that it was time to have real democratic elections. And when his opponent won, he stood aside. That's leadership. And that matters over time. Other institutions matter. Democracy matters. 20 years ago, people would have said, you know, democracy is a nice thing, but if you want to be successful, democracy doesn't matter. I don't think that's true anymore. Over the last 20 years, the most successful developing countries, with one big exception called China, have been democracies. Whether it's Ghana or Liberia or South Africa emerging from the chaos of apartheid, whether it's India, whether it's Indonesia after Suharto, whether it's Korea after the generals, throughout the developing world, not all, but most of the countries that have been successful since the end of the Cold War have been democracies. So I think those institutions of accountability and transparency and leadership matter a lot. Fourth, geography matters. Look, some countries have it easier than others. And those who say that geography doesn't matter, frankly, haven't been around the world very much. It matters a lot if you're a coastal economy in a place where crops grow, where water is more prevalent and available, and where you have better connections with the rest of the world. And for countries and for people who live in landlocked, isolated countries in the middle of a desert, for example, most of Sahelian Africa, it's tough. It's really hard. And I wish that I could say that I have solutions, easy solutions for Mali and for Niger or Afghanistan, which is a landlocked desert, or tough places like that. I wish I could say it's easy. It's not. And those are some of the greatest development challenges we have going forward. So geography matters. And then fifth, international support matters. While we in the outside are not the most important factors, what we do matters in terms of our trade policies, in terms of our investment policies, in terms of technology, and in terms of foreign aid. I have read every study that's been done in the English language on foreign aid. I've conducted some of the research. Jeff Sachs, who's coming later, Jeff and I have written a lot about foreign assistance. The predominant evidence is that foreign aid works. Not always, not across all countries. There's been a lot of failures. But for the most part, it works. It's helped South Korea get on its feet. It's helped Indonesia over the years. It's helped Botswana. It's helping Liberia. It's helping Ghana, and many other successful stories. We at USAID have to learn the lessons of what has worked and what has not in the past. But I would not have the job I have today. I would not be doing the work I do today if I did not believe that we can make a difference. It's a modest difference. It is not the leading factor behind development, but what we do matters. So that's my second point, that in terms of what works and what doesn't. But with all this success over the last couple of decades, it's not enough. And I do not want to suggest that it's all happy days and things are just fine, because it's not. I mentioned that the number of people living below $1.25 a day poverty is still 1.3 billion. That's unacceptable. It's a lot better than 1.9 billion people, but it's not good enough. I mentioned the UNICEF report that came out this week that said that for the first time ever, we've got fewer than 7 million kids dying from preventable diseases last year, and that's a great achievement. But 7 million children dying from preventable diseases is not good enough. It's not good enough. Millions of people do not have access to clean water, much less electricity, much less a decent education, much less a connection to a market where they can buy and sell goods and get good jobs. The progress that's been achieved over the last couple of decades, I believe, can be continued and can be expanded, but it's up to the people who live in the developing countries. It's up to their leaders. It's up to you. It's up to me. It's up to all of us, and especially as people like me get old and hobble around and become brain dead, it's going to be increasingly up to you, which is why I'm really glad that you're all here. So what can you do? First, you can make sure that people know that development success is not just possible, that it's happening. Don't let people tell you that this is a failure, because it's not. And the facts just do not back it up. Anybody who looks at the facts, both positive and negative, and we've got to look at the negatives as well, simply cannot conclude that we are not making progress. We are making unbelievable progress in many, many ways. So first, don't let people tell you that it's a failure. Success is not just possible, it's happening. Second, our actions matter. And here I'm talking as someone from the West. While what we do is not the most important thing, it matters. Our trade policies matter. And we have policies, we in the United States and Europe and Japan have policies that actually make it very difficult for people to come out of poverty because of our agricultural policies and some of our other policies that really make it much more difficult to climb out of poverty. Policies around responsible investment and what we do. Things like instituting laws such as under the Dodd-Frank bill that say that companies registered on the SEC that invest in developing countries have to disclose the income that they earn. Simple thing. But up until the Dodd-Frank bill, that wasn't the law. But making those transactions transparent, encouraging developing countries to make transparent when they get payments from oil companies or other mining companies, so that people know. People should know. So our actions matter in terms of responsible investment. Our actions matter in terms of climate change, in terms of what we do as climate change. Developing countries can do very little outside of China and India in terms of actually affecting climate change, but all of them will be affected. So what we do and the actions that we collectively take in the coming years around climate change will have a huge impact on global poverty. Our actions matter in terms of pushing for democratic and accountable governments, and this is not easy because democracy is not easy. But the more we push for democratic governments, the more we push for transparent governments and accountable governments, and we stand with those who do that, the better the world will be. What else can you? You can volunteer. Earl's going to take names. Sign up for the Peace Corps. Or anything else. You want to work in development? Get out there and do it. You can't really understand at all, even just begin to understand development until you live and work side by side with people in developing countries. So I encourage you to apply for the Peace Corps or for teaching or for many, many, many other programs that will take you overseas. My wife and I joined when we were young, and it was the single most important decision that we made after getting married. So I'm a little biased in that way, but I really do believe that. So you can get out and make a difference in your own lives and the lives of other people. And we can also get out and tell people that our foreign assistance, for the most part, works. We need to hold our foreign assistance agencies accountable. You need to hold us at USAID accountable. And you need to call us out when we do stuff that doesn't work. But we also, by the same token, need to get out there and get people to understand that, by and large, what we're doing is working, and that foreign assistance is a smart investment. It's good for our security here in the United States. It's good for global stability. It's good for global prosperity. And it's good for fighting global poverty. So when we put all this together, I believe that we're making huge progress in development. I believe that you have a huge role to play now and in the future. I believe that we can continue to make progress in fighting global poverty, and that if we all work together, we can widen the circle of global development and create a safer and more prosperous world for everyone. Thank you very much.